Obviously, it's been translated into English. You don't need to speak French in order to read Les Misérables. But there is one particular point of French grammar that might be useful to know. Tu and vous, the two French forms of you, are sometimes surprisingly significant in Les Mis. So let's quickly go over the two different forms of you. Tu is singular, informal. So you would use it speaking to friends, family members, a lover. Adults use it speaking to children. Children use it speaking to other children. It's for a single person who generally you know well or can be casual with. Vous is plural and or formal. You would use it speaking to a group of people, but you would also use it speaking to someone who's of higher status or a stranger who you want to be polite to. Neither one of them is viewed as impolite as long as they're used correctly. So, for instance, it would be impolite for a student to address their teacher as tu, but it wouldn't be impolite for them to address their classmate as tu. The way that they're used in Les Mis, though, it often tells you something about the characters, and it often demonstrates a level of either politeness or familiarity. So, for instance, Marius and Cosette, when they're meeting together in the garden at Rue Plumet, it's specifically said that they address each other as tu. Marius also, when he starts addressing Cosette as tu, he addresses Eponine as vous. In fact, Victor Hugo says that he feels like he can't do both. He can't call them both tu. Now, he addresses other people as tu. He calls his friend Courfeyrac tu, for instance. But with Eponine, because she has romantic feelings for him, but he wants to be with Cosette, he calls Eponine vous to indicate his rejection of her, basically, his emotional distance from her and not wanting to become closer. It's very polite and formal. It's the way that you would address a stranger or a casual acquaintance. Eponine, on the other hand, frequently asks him to call her tu, which indicates her desire to be closer to him. The question of what they're going to call each other, which form of you they're going to use, very much indicates their different views on their relationship. Another important instance of tu is with Fantine, when it said that of her friends, she's the only one who's been called tu by only one other person. Now, that doesn't mean that she's literally only been called tu by one person. As a child, a lot of adults probably would have addressed her as tu, for instance. But what it's saying there is that she's the only one who's only had one lover. Only one man has addressed her as tu in a romantic context. It's not really meant to be taken literally, but more figuratively, to say that she has only given her heart to one man. And then the final instance of vous versus tu that I wanted to talk about is Valjean and Javert. At the barricades, after Jean Valjean spares Javert's life, this happens. Having taken a few steps, Javert turned round and shouted to Jean Valjean, "You annoy me. I'd rather you killed me." Javert himself did not notice that he was no longer addressing Jean Valjean with disrespectful familiarity. And there's a footnote that says, Javert here uses the vous form in addressing Jean Valjean. So in this case, he's been calling him tu as a form of disrespect. They're not family members, they're not close friends. He's calling him tu because it signifies that he sees him as inferior. So when he starts calling him vous, it's a sign of politeness. He's suddenly seeing Valjean as an equal, someone who he needs to be courteous to, even if he's not quite understanding that yet. I actually think it's really interesting the way that the different forms of you become important in Les Mis. And those aren't the only times that it's brought up. Those are just a few instances that I wanted to highlight.